Those are the latest headlines from BBC World News. More, of course, on all our stories online at bbc.com.
You're watching BBC World News. In the popular imagination, Egypt is timeless, unchanging, the land of the pharaohs. Yet, almost out of nowhere, it's become the land of revolution and people power. Hundreds of thousands of demonstrators, led by the Facebook generation, poured onto the streets and swept away the autocratic president of 30 years, Hosni Mubarak. With the military now in charge, promising free and fair elections, Egypt is a nation uncertain of its future. This programme will explore the underlying social, economic and political strains that contributed to this popular revolt. We'll also examine the risks and potential that will now have to be faced by the country's single greatest asset, its people.
عايزين نشتغل ونشوف لقمة عيشنا بس فقط، مالناش دعوة خليهم سرقوا البلد يخلوهم بغرف تاعي وتيجي حكومة نظيفة.
The overriding desire now is the chance to have a better life for themselves and their families.
اللي لا فيه شغل تمشي كده تلقى العيال قاعده على الشوارع اللي عم تعملوا الكلام. فعايزين حل للناس دي الشباب دي.
If ordinary people are concerned for the future, international observers too have mixed opinions on where the country may be headed. We'll bring you their perspective, a third eye, cast by expert commentators abroad. Dr. Eugene Rogan is director of the Middle East Centre at Oxford University in the UK and author of The Arabs, A History. Leslie Gelb is President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations and a former US State Department official. And Emma Bonino is a former European Commissioner and Egypt scholar.
The challenge that any government faces today in the Arab world is providing education, healthcare, jobs, housing, so that people can have a dignity of life to which they aspire.
The Facebook generation or the connection to the world is an element that has been totally underestimated. And I think that the think tank, the experts, politicians really didn't really read what was happening, right? Even in the most remote village in Upper Egypt of everywhere, people are connected.
My hope is that the Egyptian army and the Egyptian people will work toward a real, not a fake democracy. And that means building up the institutions, free press, rule of law, and the like that are necessary for a real democracy. But I'm not betting on it because it's very hard to get from the streets to a real democracy.
Many of Egypt's 83 million people live along the Nile River. And nearly 40% of them still live on less than $2 a day. In Cairo itself, wealth goes hand in hand with poverty. But if life is tough for many in the capital, it is much harder still for those living in the country's south, or Upper Egypt as it's known. Here, the percentage of people living in poverty is nearly double the national average and is at its worst in rural areas. 65-year-old Sadiq Hassanain Ali is a farmer near the Upper Egypt town of Asyut.
ده قمح وكرنب. السنة دي كان وحش اللي هو السنة اللي فاتت دي. اللي هي كان الجو حر على طول. قام القمح خس التلت بالضبط.
In many ways, life is even tougher for the young. Some 2/3 of the population are under the age of 30, and 90% of those are out of work.
صعوبة الحياة أقل واحد معه 5-6 أولاد، وطبعا اللي متعلم ما لاقيش شغل وراقد في البيت. يعني الحالة صعبة شوي. يعني أنت تبص تلقى أقل بيت فيه 3-4 ما فيش واحد شغال.
On paper, Egypt has made plenty of progress in recent years, introducing measures to make it easier to start new businesses and create jobs. Even in the midst of the global recession, the country still boasted growth of around 5%. But the benefits didn't trickle down to the people.
It does create a sense of social injustice, and I think this is one thing that the government really did fail to pay attention to.
In an effort to spread the benefits of growth more evenly, the Mubarak regime created industrial zones away from the cities, enabling people to find work without migrating. Mohammed Talat Khalifa, the chief investment officer for Egypt's biggest garment manufacturer, employing some 7,000 people, knows the value of that policy.
This industry is a labor-intensive industry, and you need to maintain the qualified and the well-trained labor. So, number one, we believe that here you're near to the pool of your labor force that's needed.
Employers complain that much of the workforce is second-rate, a result of the often shoddy education system. There's a shortage of skilled labour, which the company has tackled by educating its own people.
We give them the training and we select the best of them so they can work, and whoever not being selected, they work and they got the talent and now they got the skills so they can work in different other places.
For Subi Jamal Bushra Faraj, it meant he could remain close to home and look after his parents.
اتعلمت حاجات كتير هناك في القاهرة، بس طبعا كنت تعبان لأن طبعا بعيد عن البلد، طبعا محتاج حد خدماتي أنا الشخصية والحاجات دي طبعا كنت مفتقدها جدا. إنما لما جيت هنا طبعا عشت حياة آدمية من شغل للبيت ومن بيتي للشغل، فدي فرقت معايا كتير جدا طبعا.
Women want better lives too, but social pressures are strong. This woman's father was at first against her taking a job.
معاه وكلمته وقلت له سيبني اشتغل واللي ربنا يرزقني بيه انا ادولك او يقدر يساعد معاك ان احنا حالتنا الماديه كانت تعبانه شويه في الاول.
The flow of new money that the industrial park brought has yielded bonuses to the community.
طبعا في طبعا مستشفى اتبنت هنا في البلد، وفي مدرسه اعدادي مدرسه ابتدائي، فطبعا دي حاجات كويسه في الفترات الاخيره دي حصلت واتعملت يعني.
It wasn't only schools that benefited. Between 2005 and 2010, there was a huge jump in foreign investment, which brought in over $43 billion.
It was essential to try and open Egypt's economy up, but the way it was done meant that the benefits went to a very, very small part of the population. And it created, much as we saw in the sort of rapid market privatization projects in Russia or whatnot, the creation of cliques who benefited from the conversion of state assets into private property, where it went through a market and right into their pocket.
The majority of the population in Egypt is under 25. And I think that the population growth, which is typical of many countries, but in Egypt was a sort of a ticking bomb. And I always thought like that, even when I was living there, because evidently you have already a high level of unemployment, plus you have 1 million new guys that enter the labor market every single year.
The fact is, there just aren't enough jobs to go round. Many end up taking what they can get. Hani Ezat is a 34-year-old Coptic Christian Zabaleen, or rubbish collector. He runs a recycling business and says the Zabaleen suffer insult because they're regarded as being on the bottom rung of society.
واحد يبقى معدي مثلا وانا بشيل كيس زباله او العربيه مضايقه في حاجه، يا زبال يا حمار يا حيوان. فدي بتفرق معانا قوي، يعني احنا بنتخانق كل يوم بسبب الموضوع ده على فكره، واحنا ما بنستحملش الكلمه، هي مهنتنا. بس الزبال ما اسموش زبال، الزبال بينظف مش بيوسخ، الساكن هو اللي بيوسخ واحنا اللي بننظف.
Until 2003, the Zabaleen were paid to collect the rubbish. Then the government sold the rights to rubbish collection to big international companies. That left the Zabaleen to scavenge and fill in the gaps in the collection system. The constant hope is that their children will have something more to look forward to.
كرهم في مستقبل تاني طبعا. يعني أنا معايا بنت نفسي تبقى يعني حاجة كويسة، بس مش في الزبالة يعني تتعلم وتكمل تعليمها وتطلع حاجة كويسة، دكتورة، مهندسة، أي حاجة كويسة.
For most Zabaleen children, that's an idle dream. In fact, the lack of adequate education is common across Egypt. Groups like the Zabaleen often resort to setting up their own schools. Ezat Al-Gwindi is the co-founder of one for Zabaleen children who missed out on state education.
They become well-qualified recyclers, they become developmental workers in the association in the garbage segregation project. They become teachers, some of them here are working as teachers, so they are key people now to make a change in the community.
Decades of poverty, underemployment and a lack of opportunity for the young, coupled with corruption and political repression, triggered the revolution. The Zabaleen, like millions of other Egyptians, finally decided that enough was enough. In part 2, we look at how Egypt may now evolve towards a post-revolution democracy and at the concerns about who will end up pulling the strings in the new government.
Boat acha.
India, incredible India.
My guest on Hard Talk is Maurice Glassman. He's coined the Blue Labour slogan to try to revitalise the party among a disillusioned electorate. But are his ideas too similar to the ruling Conservatives and Liberal Democrats to make any real impact? That's Hard Talk on BBC World News.
If you enjoy lively debate with some of the quickest minds...
That's not true. This goes right to the heart of a corruption in democracy.
With an international angle.
It's not brave, it is suicidal for a politician to take such drastic steps.
These are very interesting ideological times. I suspect you don't entirely agree with me. Join me, Gavin Esler, for Dateline London.
As Egypt wakes from its people's revolution and faces dramatic change, there is a vacuum created, and some fear who might fill it. Egypt plans a democracy with free and fair elections. The widely discredited parliamentary election in late 2010 left opposition candidates with only about 5% of the seats. That lack of proper democratic representation proved a major catalyst for the recent unrest. But what of the future?
I fear that these people who are in the streets rebelling against oppression will simply end up being governed by new dictators, that their revolution will be hijacked by new oppressors.
Democracy is the kind of system in which it's not simply your friend that wins. That is a little bit too easy. Democracy is the kind of system that also allows people to elect, quote unquote, wrong leaders. We know about it.
The Muslim Brotherhood, which in past elections has picked up as much as 20% of the seats in Parliament, has gained popular support by making up for the inadequacies of the state, providing social services to help the poor, including health, education and job training programmes. But there are some who are concerned about the movement.
The Muslim Brotherhood, frankly, still scares me. I know it's not popular to say that everyone says the Muslim Brotherhood is now reformist-minded and democratic and they're not anti-women, but to me, they've got to prove it, given their history.
Essam El-Erian, a spokesman for the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, vehemently rejects that view.
Islam is pro-safety, pro-democracy, pro-stability, pro-cooperation, respecting all religions, respecting all minorities, preserving equal rights and duties also for all people.
There's a different message, though, from one of the Brotherhood's key spiritual leaders, Yusuf al-Qaradawi, on his internet broadcasts.
سلط عليهم طوال التاريخ من يؤدبهم نتيجة إفسادهم. آخر تأديب كان تأديب هتلر. ما فعل بهم وإن كان مبالغوا في الأمر ما بلغوا ولكن استطاع أن يعني يوقفهم عند حدودهم وكان هذا أدبا إلهيا تأديبا إلهيا عقابا قدريا لهؤلاء والمرة القادمة إن شاء الله ستكون على أيدي المؤمنين.
A huge crowd greeted al-Qaradawi when he returned to Cairo after Mubarak's fall to lead Friday prayers. He'd been exiled from Egypt for 50 years and was measured in his rhetoric, praising both Coptic Christians as well as Muslims for their part in the uprising. The Muslim Brotherhood has built an extensive international network, funded from countries outside Egypt, such as Saudi Arabia, and including the Virginia-based International Institute of Islamic Thought, which has been investigated by a number of US government agencies for alleged involvement in the financing of terror groups. The think tank was co-founded by Malaysian politician Anwar Ibrahim, who supported the Muslim Brotherhood. Yet the Muslim Brotherhood claims its vision of Egypt today is anything but extreme.
It is the moderate Islam which is open for all people, carrying peace for all the country, for all the world. This is Islam that must be introduced to the whole world. After decade of frightening people by Mr. Bush administration and also many of the new conservatives, not only in America but also in the West, frightening people from Islam. No.
Whatever the role the Muslim Brotherhood and others play in the next government, Egypt will still face the same deep-rooted economic problems. These are most pronounced in Upper Egypt, although under Mubarak there were some signs of progress in recent years. At this factory, near the city of Asyut, workers produce disposable medical products in a joint venture with an Indian company. Auni Abdulmanain Choki is a factory supervisor who joined the factory as a security guard, working his way up through the ranks.
شايف الكمبيوتر هو مستقبل أولادي حاليا. التكنولوجيا وبيفتح مخ الطفل وبينميه. دخلت لهم نت فدلوقتي الصغير بيخش على النت والكبير وبيعرفوا الدنيا فيها ايه ويعني الحياه اللي هم عايشين فيها دلوقتي احسن من الحياه اللي كنا عايشين فيها احنا زمان.
Yet Egypt remains a conservative society. Most of the women here are the first in their family to work outside the home. Sharbat Husni-Jad is 25 years old. Despite working for 6 years, her fiancé expects her to give up her job when they marry.
عندي اخوات بنات هم قاعدين في بيت جوزهم يعني مش بيشتغلوا.
Shadi El-Agar runs the factory. He says not everything needs to change.
The old government, I think, economically was doing well, so I hope the new government keeps on the same track. Just we need to support each other and try to put transparency as the main target.
No matter what happens in the months ahead, the world will be dealing with a changed Egypt. One where people are no longer afraid to voice their demands for a better life.
My assessment is that there is a window of opportunities, great hopes, but also some concerns. And so the way forward maybe will be bumpy with some mistakes, setbacks, but also, yes, there is a lot of opportunities to have a more open society in Egypt.
I believe the biggest mistake the Mubarak government made was to underestimate the sophistication of the Egyptian people. They have shown themselves to be dignified, controlled, focused, and they've achieved their objectives. And I see no reason why they will stop in that march of progress. I really have the highest hopes for the people of Egypt.
And they are the future of this country. They drove Mubarak from power, and Egypt's leaders know that never again can they take decisions without listening to the voice of the people.